Welcome to our closing keynote on day 2 of the Environmental Management Summit. My name is Jessica Hunt, and I do want to thank everyone for joining us these past 2 days. It gives me great pleasure to welcome our 2 final speakers today. Thank you, Jill and Ryan, for being a part of our summit. We are thrilled to have you here. We are going to be talking about 5 pieces of advice about building a sustainability program. I know our attendees are extremely excited to hear from both Jill and Ryan is joining us from Lean Green Way, sorry about that, leading a program with the Mattress Recycling Council, and Jill is joining us from Brookfield Properties. And before we get started, I do want to kind of ask them, why did you decide to pursue a career in sustainability? So Jill, I'm going to give you the floor first and just get that little bit of information from you.
Thanks, Jessica, and hi, Ryan. I'm happy to be here. So why did I pursue this career? So, as a child, I spent a lot of time outdoors, camping, playing outside, and I also happened to live in a neighborhood that was being developed while I was living there, and it actually sort of upset me as a child to see the woods that I used to play in disappear, and that just really stuck with me through, my education in college, and I wrote a lot of papers on environmental sustainability and protection, and it's kind of ironic because now I work for a real estate company and I'm sort of coming full circle, but hopefully making a difference in the way that we do our development and consider our impact on the environment. So that's where it started for me a long time ago.
I love it. That's great. My kids always make comments, especially my daughter, about why do they have to cut down so many trees when they build? We built our house. Thankfully, we didn't have to cut any trees down. Otherwise, I think she probably would have lost it at some point. So thank you for that. Ryan, how about you?
Well, definitely some parallels with Jill's experience. I give a lot of credit to my grandparents for taking me to national parks in the American West. And over my childhood, we saw every single park in the West. And, really gave me this idea that these are things to be treasured. And then from that, you start to notice the wildness in your own backyard and appreciating it. And then when I was doing my undergraduate degree, the last year, we had a class about treating the university campus, Rice University in Houston, as a lab, and how can we bring sustainability to the campus as an organization as opposed to an academic institution. And that was really my first taste of how can you transition an organization towards sustainability in really pragmatic terms. And I was hooked. We weren't even calling it sustainability at the time, but it was just thinking about the system and making it better and doing it systematically. That just really intrigued me. And so that's where my career has flowed from.
And I love that you can hear the passion in both of your voices about the work that you do, which is so wonderful to see. So I do want to thank you for taking some time to jump into that. And so the way this session is going to go is Ryan's going to give us some background on his work and his 5 pieces of advice, and just give you a kind of an overview of what he is doing and has done with the Mattress Recycling Council and then beyond. We're going to get into some questions, and then Jill is going to have a turn to, go through kind of the same pattern of explaining, her pieces of advice. If you have questions for the speakers, please feel free to send them to us. We will be glad to pass them on after that. But at this point, Jill and I are going to hop off screen and give Ryan the time to speak.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Jessica. The topic of developing a strategic and impactful sustainability program. And, I'm featuring my work here with Mattress Recycling Council, but I also wanted to draw lessons from other work I've done as well. And just so you know where I'm coming from, I came up through the Toyota company, and so led a lot of sustainability programs for Toyota for many years as an in-house person. And then after that, left and started Lean Green Way. And I've done additional strategic sustainability work with companies like Lockheed Martin, Walmart, CyrusOne, which is a data center real estate company. So pretty wide range of different companies. And then specifically the Mattress Recycling Council, I've been leading their sleep products sustainability program, which is reaching out to a lot of different mattress manufacturers and helping them wherever they're at in their sustainability journey. Some of them have zero and they need a place to get started. Some of them have some existing programs and need a way of tying it together and taking it to the next level. So there's kind of a range here that I'll be drawing from. Mattress Recycling Council, in case you're not familiar with it, is a nonprofit organization that the mattress industry formed to operate recycling programs for states that have a mattress recycling law. To consumers, it's known as Bye-Bye Mattress. How can you make your mattress go and get recycled into new materials for industry? It's a lot of people think of the recycling piece of it, but there's also a lot of other behind the scenes work that the Mattress Recycling Council does around working with like commercial volumes for hotels, universities, doing research into new markets for these materials, because there's a lot of different materials in a mattress, and how can we find new mattress or new markets for those materials to go into. And then finally, SP2, or the Sleep Product Sustainability Program. And that program is very much aimed at the operations of manufacturing as opposed to the product itself. And it's focused on making source reductions for waste, energy, and water, and really arranged around that Deming cycle of continuous improvement for Plan, Do, Check, Act, PDCA. And it was set up for mattress manufacturers to get a kickstart for starting sustainability, to not have to start with a blank sheet of paper, and to really give them a framework to work with. And then we also do a lot of upstream efforts on the design side, and how can we think about materials ahead of time, 11 years before it becomes waste. So new materials that are entering the market now. So that's kind of the background of where some of these lessons are coming from. But in terms of advice, I was thinking about somebody we're starting out, or we're earlier in their program, in terms of thinking strategically about sustainability. Also understanding that there's limited time and attention that you can devote to this. The first piece of advice I was thinking about is to assess and prioritize stakeholder. Stakeholder analysis, of course, but specifically to get specific with it. So not just say customers, but to say, what are the different groups of customers we have? Maybe your bigger customers have different needs than your smaller customers, or maybe there's other ways of dividing those customers up. Investors, don't just say investors, because the need of stockholders can be very different than the need of bond buyers. And then, that's going to be different from proxy advisors. And if you're in a private ownership, that's a very different situation. So get granular about this stuff. Employees is another good one. One of the companies I was working with, we said, well, how important is sustainability to your employees? And the subtext was, well, we asked a couple of people that are about to retire, and they said it's not that important to them. And so, well, what about the incoming people that you just recently hired? Oh yeah, it's really big for them. It's really important for perspectives, for people who are considering whether to choose our company to work for. So making that distinction there can be very helpful. On the community side, really think about when you say community, typically a lot of people have one aspect of it in mind, but are we talking about the neighbors that are adjacent to our facilities? Or are we talking about non-governmental organization, environmental nonprofits, et cetera? Or are we just talking about public opinion writ large, particularly if you're a public-facing brand? Industry associations, chances are your company belongs to multiple industry associations, and sometimes they have conflicting interests when it comes to sustainability. And being aware of those and prioritizing them and understanding what your constraints and objectives are with each of those groups. And then the last one, I want to be very specific, regulatory body relationships. So this is the beyond compliance stuff. Of course, you're going to follow the law. So that's a given. That's not a stakeholder prioritization, of course you're going to follow the law, but then on top of that, there are some regulatory bodies, and it could be a variety of things, where in addition to following the law, you also want to develop an ongoing relationship with, and knowing whether you do, and then who really do you need to form that relationship with can help you see them as a stakeholder, not just a law bringer. And then the second piece of that, once you've kind of done a little more granular stakeholder assessment, is to prioritize them ahead of time. And I say ahead of time because they're going to come in conflict with each other. And it's really important for you to know who, as a company, you want to give priority to them. And it can help. Also, doing this can help articulate why and get people out of their silos, because if you talk to investor relations, what the most important thing is, they're going to say investors. If you talk to the sales folks, they're going to say customers. Of course, that's their world. That's the most important thing to them. But having this done at a company level can really help set the direction and make sure that the investor relations folks are thinking about the sales folks' needs as well. May not value it the same, but at least they're aware that there are some other priorities going on. The second piece of advice I was thinking about is around the various surveys, ratings, platforms, programs, awards, all the ways that you can externally engage and disclose or celebrate or give information about your sustainability program. And there are a lot of them. The 5 categories I came up with here are the surveys that you actively fill out. So the biggest ones being CDP, Dow Jones Sustainability Index, and GRESB. There's probably 8 more that I didn't list. There are some ratings where they will score you, whether you participate or not, and then give you an opportunity to correct it. And there's a variety here. There are also platforms that are more from your customers looking at you as part of their supply chain, where they'll ask you to fill out a very long survey. And then there are some programs that you can engage with, like the Science Based Targets Initiative or EPA Green Power Partnership, things that you opt into, but are an important external touch point for you. And then finally, there are awards like the E+E Leader Award, where you can apply, you can hold up one of your programs and say, hey, I think we did a good job on this. Or somebody nominates you and there's an opportunity to get some accolades. The challenge with all of these is, one, there's a lot of them and they get more challenging each year. So it's very, very possible that you could spend 100% of your time reporting externally and not doing any improvement internally. And I don't think that's a good balance of time. So your stakeholder prioritization that I just talked about can give you some ranking and sorting to be able to say, okay, so we can't do it all. So what we're going to do is this year, we're just going to start with 1 or 2 or 3, and we're going to get good at those. And then next year, we're going to add 1 or 2 more and 1 or 2 more. And to be strategic about it, because the default that I see a lot of companies do is they receive an email from somebody saying, hey, fill out our thing, or, oh, yeah, and they scramble around and fill out the thing, and then they receive another email, fill out our thing. And so it's very easy to chase the latest and loudest, which is not strategic. So if you don't know where to start at all, I'd recommend start with CDP Climate. It's the most transparent, it's the easiest to see how other companies have answered, and it is the foundation that a lot of other surveys are based on. So if you don't know where to start, my personal advice, start with CDP Climate. The third, and this is kind of a hard one, but an important hard learned lesson, is get used to uncertainty. Strategic sustainability does not lend itself to the simple calculations. You are not going to have perfect information. It's not like upgrading the LEDs where you can calculate. You will have exactly a 2.3-year payback. Strategic sustainability is much more akin to strategic planning and risk management, and it's asking hard questions like, what is the risk of actually losing customers, of customers going to our competitors who have a better sustainability offering? Or what are the risks of regulatory changes that are going to like materially affect our business? Or maybe you want to achieve market differentiation in a crowded market. So these are the things that you can't just reduce it to a number. And invariably, somebody's going to raise their hand in a meeting and say, well, but what's the internal rate of return on this? It's like, I can't give you a number, but here are the risks of inaction and here are the risks of action. And so it's a very different conversation that you have to have and you have to get used to having. So that's number 3. There we go. Number 4 is, and this is the Toyota coming through in me, but really think in terms of a continuous improvement cycle, because you're going to implement some new programs. And then at the end of the year, you're going to do your calculations to see how they worked. Did they improve your overall performance? And maybe they didn't, and you learned something new, and that's great. And then after you've done your annual calculations, you're going to publish your annual sustainability report, most likely. And then you can use that report to then answer the surveys and the ratings and the awards, and try to, most of the companies I work with, try to have that published sustainability report be that one focal point that everything else gets based on. However, as you're answering the surveys, ratings, awards, you're going to come up with questions that they ask of you that you don't have a good answer for. And that is okay. You're not going to have a good answer for everything, especially the first year you do it. But be sure to record that on your gap analysis list and say, what sort of new programs do we need to implement so that we will have a good answer next time around? And again, prioritizing the gap list, you can't do it all in one year. See this as a long game and as a cycle. And then in particular, you want to be able to lay this out on a calendar, because chances are, so for instance, surveys, ratings, awards, they happen on an annual basis. And a lot of things kind of work backwards from them. So laying that out and seeing it as a 12-year cycle or 12-month cycle is very, very important and can give you some forewarning for collisions that may come up. And then the last piece is to extend that idea of continuous improvement from a corporate level down to an operations level. And this is really where the SP2 Sleep Product Sustainability Program gets down into an individual manufacturing plant and says, okay, let's look at this in terms of plan, do, check, act, and then certify. Seek that external third-party certification. Involve those operations in your planning so that they're not just receiving some idea from upon high, but they've had some input into the process. And then the last piece here is just, there is a balance between giving very general direction that allows the operations to be creative and adapt, or giving very specific prescriptive direction. And I give 2 examples here of improve your 3R rate, your reduce, reuse, recycle rate by 2 percentage points this year. And that gives them a lot of leeway in how they go about doing that and gives them creativity and adaptation, but it means that they have to think about it and spend some time, as opposed to initiate a recycling stream for this material using this company here, and here are the labels for you. And it's not that one is right or wrong, but the second one takes away all creativity, but it also takes away their need for planning. And so sometimes that can be more efficient, but just do it intentionally and as part of your plan. The way we lay this out in SP2 is to say, okay, environmental policy leads everything, regulatory compliance on the bottom is the floor for all of it. And then we have our plan, do, check, act cycle. In the planning stage, we say, what is our environmental impact, what our facility impact assessment, what are our goals and targets, and what do we plan to do when things go wrong, when the recycler stops picking up, when the water main breaks and you have a river flowing through your facility, those sorts of things. You plan your improvement projects, you engage your employees, give them the training they need, and very importantly, reach out to suppliers to help you with those projects and start new projects. Check, measure how you're doing. What metrics do you need to track to see if you're having the impact you want? And then verify your program. Walk the facility with a checklist and say, okay, are the recycling bins where they need to be? Is equipment being turned off at the end of the shift the way it's supposed to be? And then thinking of certification as another type of check that is external. And finally, act on what you found. Have a list of corrective and preventive actions to fix things. and then celebrate your successful practices and share with others. So just thinking about it in that cycle gives some structure and some discipline to the process. In particular, and it's kind of the last idea here, is third-party certification has a lot of benefits. In the most important ones are not the ones you think about. So of course you get credibility and accolades, and that's what everybody thinks about is, oh, we get congratulations from somebody else. We don't have to toot our own horn. It's somebody else tooting our horn for us, and that's great. PR loves it, marketing loves it, fantastic. However, from a sustainability professional standpoint, it's really helpful to have this external framework or scoring system, especially early on, where you can say, hey, we don't have to think about all the things to consider. We've got this framework already built for us. And so if you think about maybe what LEED did for green building is to give a framework for thinking about things, or what True does for zero waste is to say, here's all the things to think about in your zero waste program. And you don't have to make it up from scratch. It also, very helpfully for the sustainability department, brings a non-negotiable standard of performance. So you don't have to advocate for every single detail that's in that standard, and it creates some floors and minimums. We can say, okay, so we've signed up to do true zero waste. So we signed up for the whole thing. We don't have to go down and argue for each individual point as sustainability people. So that has a lot of benefit beyond just the accolades. So that's my big ideas for advice, and I'll leave this in there for reminder. But Jessica, do you want to take it from here?
Definitely, and I feel like we could probably spend an hour on each one of them. Yeah. On each one of your pieces of advice, but I do want to focus on the stakeholder groups that you mentioned. I really do like how you broke those down. So if you are a company and you are just starting out trying to establish your sustainability program, and you are trying to, I guess, how can a company simplify their stakeholder groups and still demonstrate that they are working towards a successful holistic program? And then how often are you analyzing that data among the different stakeholder groups?
So I think there is some seduction in simplifying it too much. And I think it can be dangerous to say, well, customers want this, because somebody internally is going to say, well, I represent 3 customers and they don't care about this. So thus, all customers don't care about this. And so having the ability to make distinctions and to separate these is very important for addressing some of those concerns, where we could say, oh, so your 3 customers don't care about this. That's really important feedback. Thank you for letting me know, because I just talked to so-and-so and their 3 customers really care about this a lot. So now let's have boxes to put these in. To address your thought about, this can get really complicated really fast, and that's very true. I think initially you can start high, but having these additional subdivisions in your back pocket can help you have those conversations and help you make those subdivisions between, somebody says, well, we're a private company, we don't have stock, investors don't matter. But do you offer bonds? Do you sell bonds? Well, yeah. Okay, well, they are also investors, and that's an important thing to consider, because green bonds can save you a lot of money. So, it's those sorts of things where, yes, you probably want to start with these big buckets, but as the sustainability professional, you want to have these subdivisions in mind, because it's going to help you clarify confusions and have those conversations within the company.
All great advice. And, I really do like how you touched on the uncertainty. Obviously we've been living in an uncertain time for the past couple of years now, and especially with supply chains and the disruptions, in every single industry. And really, companies have to be flexible and learn how to pivot and, make changes where necessary. So I do appreciate that you touched on that, and how important it is to show transparency to all stakeholders, because that's what we're looking for. Consumers are looking for transparency, as well as people on the board and CEOs and employees. So that's what that is. And at least from all of the reading that I have done and working and running different events, is transparency is something that has not always been there in
Right.
the world of sustainability. But it's imperative and it is essential for any company. So Jill, I know you haven't had a chance to talk much right now, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what Ryan said before we move on to your portion.
Actually, I just want to kind of reiterate what you were just saying. I loved how you mentioned uncertainty, because I think that's so important, and I think a lot of people don't highlight that as part of strategic sustainability or developing a sustainability program. You definitely need to get used to it. I always say a lot of sustainability is kind of squishy. It doesn't have, those balance sheet numbers that everybody always loves to see within a for-profit organization. And so it can be difficult to kind of bridge that gap when you're starting programs and, talking about how you're going to manage your risks and take advantage of opportunities within your company too. So, things change very quickly in sustainability too, which is another reason you have to be used to uncertainty. New laws and regulations are passed. In my world, building codes change a lot, and new technologies pop up constantly, and you have to be able to be flexible and to kind of, go where the sustainability is taking you. So I loved that point.
And I think one of the other really key things, and Joe, you probably have some war stories from this, is a lot of folks think that we have a metric, and being transparent means that we report the metric that we set at the beginning of the year, we set our target, and we hit our targets, and that means whether we have a good program or not. And I've been coaching companies through, hey, you know what? At the beginning of the year, you didn't anticipate a global pandemic or a war. And so that you failed your target doesn't mean you're not living up to your principles. And so when your principle is transparency and having that discussion, you could say, hey, we didn't hit our target because of these supply chain disruptions, but here's what we learned along the way, and here's our countermeasures for getting on track next year. I think that's a much more credible discussion than saying, yep, we hit our target. We set it such that we couldn't not hit it, but we hit it, so we are successful. So that commitment to transparency can really help you deal with the uncertainty, because you're more having a conversation instead of just hitting your numbers.
Absolutely. And I would say that, the fact that you understand what changed and why you couldn't hit your goal, that demonstrates a level of maturity on sustainability in your company that is better than just saying, yeah, we blew that goal out of the water. To understand, why you're not going to hit it or why you had to pivot or change the goal, that's just, that level of maturity is huge. And I think that a lot of stakeholders and investors appreciate that.
I was still on mute there. So no, I did, Ryan. I liked how your cat made a little bit of an
Yep, little guest appearance.
It happens, it happens when we do.
You have to adapt.
Exactly, you have to adapt. Well, thank you, Ryan. We're going to give Jill some time to talk now, and then Ryan, and you and I will jump back on after she's done.
Sounds good.
All right, let me see if I can share. One second. Well, thank you, everybody. Again, I'm Jill Ziegler. I work at Brookfield Properties. Just a little background on Brookfield before I get started to give you some context for my presentation. We develop and operate real estate investments on behalf of Brookfield Asset Management, which is one of the world's largest alternative asset managers. Globally, Brookfield Properties, which is our real estate arm, as I mentioned, has more than 800 managed properties, totaling about 375 million square feet. And we have another 50 million square feet or so under active development. We have dozens of portfolio companies across the globe that are focused on various types of our real estate. For example, like office buildings or logistics facilities. All of those make up our real estate business. I happen to sit within our North American development organization, which develops single family, multifamily, office, mixed use, other types of real estate within the US and Canada. We work in a couple of ways. We develop for our internal partners and sister companies within Brookfield, and we also partner with external organizations. We have some public-private partnerships, things like that, where we are real estate development partners for those. So that's where I'm coming from in this discussion. And within the North American Development Group, I head up our ESG and sustainability team. So in preparation for this session, we were asked to think about 5 pieces of advice. And my advice is rooted in a pretty lengthy career and in sustainability, much of it in real estate sustainability. But a lot of the examples I'll give will come from Brookfield. And I just wanted to share a little bit about our sustainability background and pillars. We really try to integrate it into everything we do. And we think that real estate has a lot of power to shape the world we share, and we can have a lot of impact on the environment, and we try to make our impacts positive and additive to the areas where we do business. And we do that by following these principles, these four pillars. I won't read all of this here, but these are the guiding principles that drive all of our real estate sustainability programs globally. And so every initiative and effort we undertake within any of our companies, portfolio companies around the globe, we try to tie back to these pillars and these topics that are very important to us. So I just have a few simple slides of my, few pieces of advice, and you'll see a lot of similarities with what Ryan had to say. And I think that's great, because if you kind of hear the same things over and over again from different organizations and companies and experts, it must be pretty important. So I'll just start with focusing on what matters to your business. There are dozens and dozens and hundreds of, sustainability topics you can focus on. But if you're running an organization or a business, you should really, really be focusing on the ones that make the most sense for your organization. You can conduct something called a materiality assessment if you're just getting started with sustainability, and that helps you identify the biggest sustainability risks and opportunities within, your organization or your company's value chain. And once you understand where you can have the biggest impacts, you can kind of start to hone in on where you might want to spend some more of your time and where you might want to set some goals. I think we talked about goal setting a little bit earlier. I think it's very helpful to have goals. I think they need to be meaningful, though. And I don't think a goal has to be, a certain percentage reduction in energy, for example. You could just have a goal to set a goal within 2 years, or you can have a goal to just measure some baseline data on whatever it is you're focusing on. And I think that's helpful to help move the needle forward. And, we were talking about transparency a little bit, and I think transparency kind of falls under this a little bit in the goal setting. It's important to just be transparent with your stakeholders about what you're doing and demonstrate that you understand, where those risks and opportunities lie within your business, and be flexible and responsive to kind of how the world is changing around you and how your business might be changing for whatever reason. And I also think that, I've mentioned stakeholders. Ryan did an amazing job talking about stakeholder engagement. And I think that falls into here too, because a lot of what matters to your business is your stakeholders and what matters to them. And I think, your stakeholders can be a whole host of groups or people. And I think you need to look internally, your own employees, and you also need to look externally. It's not just your immediate stakeholders. It's not just your customers. It's not just your investors. It's, your neighbors. It's the community surrounding where your business is operating. It's your supply chain, up and down the supply chain, and figure out what's meaningful to them and how you can work together to advance sustainability. So number 2 is prioritize. I almost said prioritize because I think it's really, really important. Basically, don't try to boil the ocean if you're just getting started on sustainability. Years ago, I was working for a different real estate company, and we went through this whole assessment, and we came up with this list of 35 things that we felt like we could be actioning on and managing. And it's just not sustainable unless you have a team of, 35 people to manage each and every one of those. A lot of companies that are just starting out in this space have one person. Maybe they're not even full-time focused on sustainability. And you really want to make sure you're prioritizing what's going to have the biggest benefit, and also what some of the quickest wins could be in terms of your sustainability goals. Target quick wins, and then also the things that are very meaningful for you. Sustainability is absolutely a marathon, not a sprint, and you'll have more success if you're focused on the things that matter most to your company. I'm also going to focus on educating and engaging, which is really important. And this spans everything, all of your stakeholders, essentially. You should be educating and engaging them. You can't do sustainability alone. Everybody has to be on board. And I would advise to use kind of existing communications channels to start to infuse and integrate sustainability into that. If you have an intranet or an employee newsletter, speak to the people who are in charge of that and get some sustainability stories in there. Share your successes, put out calls for volunteers, or if you're a large organization, figure out what's happening in the different regions that maybe you don't have visibility into. But if those communications channels already exist, see how you can weasel your way in there from a sustainability standpoint. And that goes for a lot of different ways too. If you're a company that's trying to win new business a lot and you're responding to RFPs, make sure you're telling your sustainability story within those. If you have customers, tell them what you're doing. We operate real estate, we have office buildings, and we have an app that we can communicate to our tenants and the workers in our office buildings all the time. And we make sure that we include a lot of sustainability content in there, a lot of health and wellness content, which I consider to be under the sustainability umbrella, about what they can appreciate about the building and what we as those building managers are providing for them and doing for them. I also think, I do a lot of inviting myself to other people's staff meetings. You'll find out really quickly, like, who in your organization, is very interested in sustainability and who you might want to talk to and work more closely with. So if you know some folks internally and they have a regular staff meeting, oftentimes they're really looking to fill an agenda, and they'll give you 10 minutes to come in and talk about what's happening in the world of sustainability, what you're working on. And you'll find a lot of internal champions that way, and you'll be able to share successes that way as well. Finally, just celebrate those successes. I think a lot of us in sustainability are very busy and kind of focused on the next thing we need to do. And we don't always pause to share what we're doing well and things that went right. And I think that's what a lot of our coworkers and the people using our buildings, living in our apartments, working in the office buildings we build, really appreciate. They like to hear what we're doing and when we're having those successes. So that's really important, and it's very important to kind of pause to do that. Next, find your people. Ryan touched on this a little bit, but I'm going to maybe expand a little bit. But in the real estate world, we have a lot of industry groups, industry associations, and nowadays just about all of them have committees focused on sustainability in one way or another. And, whether it's a task force or a working group, something more formal, more casual. So I think that's an amazing place to start. Find people in your industry who are already focused on this. They're going to be amazing sounding boards for you. They're going to be some of the only people who understand what you're going through on a day-to-day basis in terms of successes and also kind of roadblocks you might be hitting along the way. I really find, at least in the real estate world, that the folks who do my job, my peers at other real estate companies, are incredibly open to sharing. Nobody kind of protects our secrets. Nothing's proprietary. We say a rising tide lifts all boats. Like, we all want to do sustainability well, and we want other real estate companies to do it well too. Our investors are asking about it, and we want everyone to succeed. And if we're all doing a great job, we feel that the real estate industry will get more recognition for kind of doing sustainability well. And so we're kind of all in it together, and it's just incredibly valuable and helpful to be able to have people you can turn to when you've got a tough nut to crack or a challenge, or even, share a success. If you find a great consultant, be able to share that with others so they can have some of the same successes as you. I also think outside of finding your people in external organizations or industry groups or even nonprofit organizations that focus on your industry, you need to find your people internally. If sustainability is new to your organization, I guarantee there are a lot of folks who are personally passionate about it or think there are opportunities in their day-to-day job where they could be integrating sustainability. So find those people. If you're just starting out, it's important to have those champions. And I think you'll find, their expertise lie across the board. Some are very into the day-to-day sustainability and educating people about what they can be doing at home and what they can maybe bring into the office and certain practices. And some are interested in technology and they're willing to kind of vet new technologies that might be applicable to your business, whether it's a new process or a product or, in my case, something to manage energy or water or help report our data. So I think you'll find a lot of folks within your organization too that you can maybe lean on, or even just bounce ideas off of, kind of a gut check as you're developing a sustainability program. It's really important. And number 5 is avoid random acts of sustainability. I say random acts of sustainability all the time, because I think a lot of companies sort of fall into this trap. I think any act of sustainability, anything you're going to do in your company is amazing. It's better than nothing. But I think we can get a little caught up in not putting a strategic lens on all of the sustainability things that are happening within a company. And I think that slows sort of your maturity as a company or an organization when it comes to sustainability. It's a great idea to pilot new technologies, try new processes, and so on. But it's a little less worth the time and effort if don't have a plan to kind of capture the lessons you're going to learn from trying this pilot project, at this facility or with this product. If you can't learn from that and integrate it back into your business process. And it's also, frankly, a little more difficult to tell your sustainability story if you're doing, kind of 20 random sustainability things in all of these different regions and all of these different people are leading them. It makes, the sustainability leader's job really difficult because you have to go to 20 different people to kind of tell your sustainability story. Whereas if you're a little bit more strategic and organized around what you're doing, maybe these different projects have a theme and you're all meeting regularly to share the outcomes and the lessons learned and the best practices, and then maybe you're memorializing that in a document of some sort or integrating it into your business. That's going to have much bigger impact than kind of letting folks kind of do random projects, which is good, but just make sure you're kind of aware of what's happening, and kind of do a pause when you have a new idea before trying it, to really kind of have that plan for what I'm going to do with the information I gain from doing this project. If we go down this road, what are we going to do when it's done, right? How are we going to capture that and apply it to our business, or not? And what are we going to learn if it's not a great idea? What are we going to learn from that? So it kind of goes both ways. That's all I really wanted to share. I think we can kind of move on.
Jump back on. I don't try to boil the ocean. I love that. Never heard that phrase before, but it is definitely going to stick with me, and I have a feeling it's going to stick with our audience too. I really appreciate, Jill, how you touched on, finding your people. Mm-hmm. Find the people within your industry that you can bounce ideas off of. It is great that the building industry does seem to be so open to be able to work with peers and learning from each other and growing and really showing that, you guys are trying to make this a better place, trying to make this more of a sustainable world for all of us. So, that was some great advice. I guess going back to stakeholders too, I know there's been big shifts in stakeholder mindsets over, the past decade or so. So how have those shifting mindsets kind of, set up your sustainability program in a different way maybe than it was looked at before? And I know sustainability is somewhat new term, but not so.
I think sustainability has matured to include, kind of the overarching view of E, S, and G, environmental, social, and governance. So to me, a lot of the social is being integrated into the story, and you can't separate them. They're very tied together. And I think we're all learning how close kind of the social and the environmental are. I see in the real estate industry, we kind of all have a decent handle on the environmental stuff, right? You have to reduce energy, reduce water, use better building materials, that kind of stuff. But the social is a difficult nut to crack. And I think that, COVID really advanced that even further when you're thinking about health and wellness and the safety of, for us, the people using our buildings, living in our buildings, apartment buildings, working in our office buildings. And so that really brought the social kind of up to the forefront. And also in terms of social equity and diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's important for us internally as a company to be more proactively managing this, but also, kind of leading with that externally in, our partners in the communities where we're working and developing our buildings. So that's kind of how I see it evolving and how our stakeholder groups have kind of matured in their view of sustainability.
Oh, and thank you. I was going to follow up with some questions about diversity, equity, inclusion, and ESG, but you already covered that. So, Ryan, do you have any questions or any other thoughts that you want to talk to Jill?
Well, just to build on Jill's point, like it is evolving and it's coming year over year, and that's what makes this field so exciting. Is that we are on the frontier of this new change, new thinking. And a lot of times, like the way that some of my clients will find out about a new frontier is they'll get asked an uncomfortable question by a customer, by an investor. They'll start filling out a new investor survey and they'll ask them a question about something that they've never heard about before. And they need to quickly go do some research and come back and say, you know what, we don't have a good answer for that this year. We're going to work on it. And so you never are done. Like you don't get it figured out. You just are working on getting better and are learning what new is out there and adding it to your gap assessment so that you can start working on it, but not all of it because you can't do all of it. So yeah, it's very much thinking of it as a cycle, and a cycle that has a moving goal line.
Yeah, I say it's about continuous improvement, kind of. Yeah, and you're never done, which gets to that sort of uncertainty part of what you were saying before. Yeah.
Yeah, never done, and reflecting on what you've been working on the past year, 5 years, and how you can implement changes going forward.
Yeah, we've had to tell some leaders we would have been leaders 3 years ago, and that's never a comfortable thing, but it's true. And it helps convey that the goalposts are always moving further downfield, and we can't sit still.
Yeah, Ryan, I also want to. You mentioned, a lot of your clients get a tough question, and then that's when they kind of start to pay attention. And I love that, because maybe number 6 on my list would have been ask hard questions, because I go through this a lot in working with our procurement and sourcing department. They find that a lot of companies it's taking them longer to kind of get up to speed on the types of environmental, criteria that we want in the products we're putting in our buildings. And like, that's okay, but they're not going to know what we want unless we ask them those tough questions. Right. And if they don't have the answer, that's fine. We just need to keep asking them the question, because like every one of us customers who asks that question will change the mindset of that particular carpet manufacturer or tile maker, right? And so I think that's really important, just to talk about this more and understand they may not have the answers right away, but if they're a good company, hopefully they want to have an answer for you in another year or two, right? And that's great. That is an amazing outcome. You might have to wait, you might have to go on the journey with them, but that is a success.
But you're working together. Yeah.
And you can think of it as you're handing your fellow sustainability professional in that company more ammo, more incentive to get this done. So now it's the sales folks saying, hey, we need to do this. I just had somebody ask me and I had no answer.
Yes.
Exactly. Well, I think we are just about out of time. I could not think of a better way to end our 2-day summit than having this discussion, Jill, with you and Ryan. So I do appreciate, all of your insight, your expertise. For attendees who are on, please stay in the auditorium, because we are going to be announcing the leaderboard winners shortly. So again, thank you, Jill, and thank you, Ryan, and to everyone else who is attending today. We appreciate your participation. Thank you.
Thank you.